Rossini. The Hasselbeck brothers are back. Tim and Matt and Tim. You get it. We're going to talk about some rule changes that came out of Orlando in just a minute, but we'll start with this tweet from Adam Schefter about the potential future of a superstar. The Giants have asked for at least 2 first-round picks in return for Odell Beckham Jr. This is a leaked source to ESPN. Even though the team says, no, we're not shopping Odell Beckham. It doesn't mean they'll get it, he says, or close to it, or even trade the mercurial wide receiver, but they have asked for at least 2 first-round picks. And with that, we'll go to Orlando at the owners' meetings where Sal Palantonio and Adam Schefter are standing by. Sal anchoring our coverage. Sal?
Thanks, Wendy. We are here in Orlando at the NFL annual meeting. Roger Goodell just spoke. The owners are going back home to their 32 cities, and Adam Schefter's here to clean up some news, and it's big news. Adam, what do you got?
The Giants have been asking for at least 2 first-round draft picks for Odell Beckham Jr. Now, again, we want to be very clear and say that they are not shopping him because that's what they have insisted has been the case all week long. But the fact that they are listening to offers for their standout wide receiver, the fact that the co-owner, John Mara, had a chance to squash any of this speculation this week, and he did not, the GM did not, the head coach did not, and it just goes on, I think only adds credence to the idea that Odell Beckham Jr. and a trade is in play. And we have a situation here now where teams are vetting Odell Beckham Jr. to determine whether they should approach the Giants and how serious their offer should be. Moments after that tweet ran, I had a team reach out to me and say, is that the asking price? Because we need to go vet him and see if we want to get in on this.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. First of all, let's help out Giant fans out there. But this is one of the most... This is one of the biggest stars in the NFL, if not the biggest offensive star in the National Football League right now.
I'd say the most talented non-quarterback in the league.
Okay, no, most talented non-quarterback in the league. He is coming off an ankle injury. He only played in 4 games against the Green Bay Packers in his only playoff game. He was targeted 11 times, only had 4 catches and dropped 2 passes in the first quarter, 2 drops that could have changed the complexion of that football game. So if I'm a GM, and I'm calling the Giants, and the Giants are saying 2 first-round picks, that's a starting point. That's not an ending point.
No, and it will not be the ending point, I believe. I think that in the end, this comes in somewhere around a 1 and a 3, a 1 and a 4, depending on how much interest there is. Now, again, any team that decides to trade for him trades for him knowing that it's going to have to compensate him. So you have to satisfy Odell Beckham Jr.
That's big.
And you have to satisfy the New York Giants.
Big.
That becomes challenging to pull off. But there are teams that are going to investigate this possibility.
Let's go back to what you said originally. I want to give people some context. When did the Giants start asking for 2 first-rounders? Was it after John Mara said these comments that we were 3-13, no player is safe? That was on Sunday night. So now we're 3 days later. Is it in between that time that the Giants were started asking, or was it before that?
My sense is it was before that. And in fact, Mort and I were told Sunday morning that something big was brewing with the Giants. And then John Mara comes out and says what he does during the day. And it goes to the notion that they had been listening to teams and their interest, potential interest, in Odell Beckham Jr. Now, again, there are a lot of things that go on, and it has become public, very public this week, which I think affects how this situation plays out. But it's hard to define when they began conversations, when they made the decision. But suffice it to say this. There is a new general manager that's come in. A new general manager who once pulled the franchise tag on Josh Norman in Carolina. A new general manager who already has traded away Jason Pierre-Paul. A new general manager who wants a certain culture and wants people to fall in line.
Yeah. We could call it a new sheriff in town, actually.
Whatever you want to call it, Sal, he wants things done his way. So he was hired sometime, if I'm not mistaken, around the 1st of the year. So some point between then and now, the Giants have made a decision that, as difficult as it will be, as upsetting as it will be to some fans, they are open to listening
What do you expect to happen next?
Well, listen, we are under a month to the NFL draft. It is 4 weeks from tomorrow. And my guess is that it's the type of situation that could flare up at any moment, where all of a sudden trade talks could heat up. Just think about any trade that's ever been done. How can you ever predict when it's going to heat up? It could be the end of this week. It could be the day before the draft. It could be while a team is on the clock. We don't know. But we do know that Odell Beckham Jr. is in play. No matter what the Giants say, They want 2 first-round picks. I doubt they get 2 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
And we'll see what the price comes in at.
And they have the 2nd overall pick, so it's going to be a very volatile situation the first day of the draft if Odell Beckham Jr. is available. For Adam Schefter, I'm Sal Palantonio. Wendy, that's about as big news as you can get.
Sal, it's certainly interesting news, and I think the comments about Dave Gettleman and his history in the league and the culture he's trying to establish in New York are important ones. But let's start with this. Matt, I'll ask you as a former player. You know, it's a business, that's easy to say, another thing to live. And once this is out there, because it has become so public, the water is muddied a bit, you know, and if it doesn't come to fruition, both the team and the player have to find a way to move forward. How does this affect the future, regardless of what happens?
Well, let's just say he is on the Giants this season, okay? And we talked about it before. It's even less likely that he plays for the Giants without a new contract. You saw the whispers a couple days ago where his agent was saying, well, guess what? He's not even going to step on the field for a practice without a new deal. Now, all this, you know, his name's out there. We don't really want
Feelings are hurt at this point.
Feelings are hurt.
And he's an emotional guy in both the positive and the negative sense. We've seen that. So you would have to assume that he's hearing this and its feelings are hurt.
Adam made the point, and I think that it's dead on. Let's say this happened before, you know, there was talks about this before Sunday. Well, he wouldn't necessarily know about that. He would just think that he's trying to get a new deal from the Giants, and they love him, and they think he's amazing. And Pat Shurmur talked about how great he was when he was announced as the head coach and all that stuff. Well, then since that point, what we've seen is an owner not necessarily endorse his behavior. We've seen the head coach say, well, he's on our team right now. And now you have the idea that, look, we're actually willing to send you off to somebody else. Whether or not people feel like that should be an insult, there's no question that players are sensitive. There's no question he will find this as an insult.
Absolutely. I went back, was looking at my notes from when I was covering the Giants last summer. Back in July 2017, John Mara said, we're going to pay Odell Beckham. He deserves to get paid. The tune has changed completely.
Since when? Since when? Since the video.
Since the video.
Since the video,
well, and since
enough
also
is
they
enough.
They brought in a new GM, too. And again, let's go back to a point Adam made with Josh Norman. He's a guy who's done this before. I mean, Josh Norman, in fact, they rescinded the franchise tag and said, you know what, the price tag's too high and we don't want it.
I don't think this is a Gettleman decision. This is going to come down to John Mara. John Mara is calling the shots. Gettleman may have some say, but they're going to want to have that law and order, as we discussed yesterday. They want to all be on the same page. So I think
except, I don't care what team it is. It could be the Giants, it could be any team. You get a new GM, they are willing to move on from players that are currently on the roster when they show up. They like to bring in their own people. Usually they like to bring in their own head coach. That head coach likes to bring in his own quarterback. It trickles all the way down. New GM equals new players.
The way the Giants organization typically works is John Mara, he likes to let the football coach the players, and the players interact, and that's kind of the structure of it. Now, he will have plenty of interaction with the general manager. That's kind of his, you know, the way that he wants the structure to work. Not that he doesn't communicate with the head coach. He certainly does. But much more of his time is spent with the general manager.
Which
That's
historically is effective in any organization, that you sort of hire the right people and then empower those people to make effective decisions. And that's what the Giants have done.
And we've heard more from Dave Gettleman in the 10 weeks he's been a GM than we had with Jerry Reese in the last 10 years.
It's been very entertaining, actually. I've enjoyed it.
He's been very vocal.
Very much.
Well, listen, we've enjoyed it, but you know who hasn't enjoyed?
Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, no, but going back to when Dave Gettleman was the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, Josh Norman, Steve Smith, D'Angelo Williams. There are plenty of players that, you know, the exit from, you know, their time with that team was not a smooth one, and it ruffled a lot of feathers. And just look at how Dave Gettleman was answering questions yesterday. He was clearly ruffling feathers.
Let's put that aside for just a minute and look just on the surface. If the reports are true, we believe they are, that the asking price would be 2 first-round picks. Is that a fair asking price? Are we in the ballpark of where we should start?
You can ask.
Well, yeah, you can ask whatever you want.
But I think if you're asking for 2 first-rounders, that's what I hear is, hey, we're not really interested in trading him. But you want to throw us a crazy offer. We were 3-13 last year, and there are a couple teams. I'll name 2. Picking number 19 overall this year is the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, that's a late first-rounder. Picking 23rd overall this year, the Rams. I mean, those are 2 teams that you could say, hey, that would be pretty exciting if you added OBJ to your team. So maybe one of those first-round picks and then also a fourth-rounder, I could see that as a possibility.
You're looking at the notable wide receivers who were traded or moved on in the prime of their careers, but Tim, I'll ask you about what Matt said. I don't want to just gloss over it. Does this say to you, hey, we want to float this, we want this out there, we want to send a message, but we're not serious?
This means they can say, hey, we're not shopping him, but they're open for business.
Well,
if you have an asking price, you're open for business. My house isn't for sale, but if you want to pay twice as what I paid for it, then I'll sell it
Mine's
to you.
For sale.
Right
now.
I don't know which one is for sale.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
But here's what I will say though, so they're open for business. Like that's newsworthy because they're trying to say you don't give up on talent, you don't quit on talent. We're not shopping him. We're willing to trade him. That's what they're saying. And I would say, in terms of the asking price, you think about, Deion Branch, went to the Seahawks and became a teammate of yours, basically for a first and something else. Look, I think we would agree, and times have changed, but he's worth a first-rounder. The issue ends up being is you then have to make him the highest-paid wide receiver in football. So it has to be a team that has cap space.
Well,
the other thing about this, the timing, right before the draft.
Yeah, well.
So right before the draft, all these guys are very excited about all these college players,
right.
And you only get to have like 7 or 10 picks. I mean, just the opportunity to man, we would love some more picks, and I'm sure that's got to be on the Giants' mind.
I would agree with Diana for sure that in this instance, ownership, in particular, John Mara is going to have to sign off on this, but I just don't think you can discount a GM with a history of letting star players go in whatever capacity he has to.
Especially when he just traded a star player away to the point with JPP.
I remember talking to people with the Panthers when Gettleman was there and asking what was the thought process in getting rid of some of those players. And the answer I got was once you compromise, once you go there, once you allow a locker room to be set a certain way, and let's say they think Odell is a distraction, you can't go back. Once you're sending that message that we're okay, we're going to make it work for this guy. Once you set that rules, it needs to apply to everybody, and it's not going to if they stick with Odell in their minds. It's
also not going anywhere, this story, until he's set one way or the other. We will be talking about Odell Beckham Jr. That's the nature of that kind of player. Coming up on NFL Live, Mel Kiper Jr. is back to unveil his mock draft 3.0. We'll tell you who's risen and who has fallen. Plus, we will dig back into the Odell Beckham situation, ranking the most attractive wide receivers that are out there to possibly trade for. And you won't believe this, but Odell Beckham not in the top 5 for reasons which we'll explain. And the NFL owners passed a rule on Tuesday expanding penalties for contact involving helmets. We'll explain that as well.
Our focus is how to take the head out of the game and make sure that we're using the helmet as protection and is not being used as a weapon.
Can we finish what we started? Do we have it in us?